Larry, it is great to be here. Just so excited about everything you guys do at Dad's Edge Alliance, and just great to spend some time with you here on the podcast today.
Back at you, my friend. I'm excited to do the show. Anything we can do to help the married folk out there. That's what we need. That is
Absolutely.
What we need. Yeah. So let's get started. You've been doing this a long time. You've helped thousands of people. When did you realize this was like, hey, this is my calling. This is what I'm supposed to do?
Really, when I quit running from God, I mean, I honestly felt called to ministry probably when I was about 12 years old. And I had the traditional, you're going to be in a church, you're going to be a pastor type thing in my mind, or he's going to send me to Africa or somewhere for as a missionary. And I didn't want to do either of those things. So I kind of ran and bargained with him. And actually, Nancy we had been married probably 10 years, and she knew I'd struggled with it. Every year it would come up and I'd struggle with it. And she said, you got to get this resolved. And she said, I'm backing you, whatever you want to do. At that time, I was in business with my dad and trying to be the best Christian businessman that God ever created. So he would let go of me and let me do that and not something else. And so she suggested going to lunch with a good friend of mine that was a Christian counselor. And we're sitting there and I'm kind of sharing my story. And he just looks at me and says, have you ever thought about being a Christian counselor? And I thought, no, but that seems to fit. And so that started the journey of going back to school and going through all the stuff of finally getting a master's and then a doctorate and starting Family Christian Counseling, which is our counseling center. And then over that, I've started out really working with kids a lot. And I finally realized at some point, I got to work with people on their marriages too, because if the marriages aren't good, I'm not doing as good a service to these kids as I want to. And so God led me in that direction, started doing more marriage counseling. We launched actually a Prep for Marriage course in 2005, and then we launched Awesome Marriage in 2011, and it just had kind of evolved to that. And it really evolved out of I was doing some consultation with our church, Life Church, and at that time was their first internet, they called the internet campus then. Now it's church online, and they were getting so many calls, questions about marriage. So I started consulting with them, and the three guys that were running that and I sat it down together one day, and we just started brainstorming, how do we help people? And this was when Facebook was probably at 500 million, something like that. And somebody said, well, everybody's on Facebook. And I said, yeah, but everybody's getting mad at Facebook because old boyfriends and girlfriends are hooking up. And we decided, let's go with Facebook. We created I Want an Awesome Marriage Facebook page. And the rest is kind of history. It just kept going and got open doors. And we're celebrating our 10th anniversary of Awesome Marriage in November.
Well, congratulations, man, and good on you for listening to the call. No better person than, obviously 45 plus years of experience doing this. And how long have you been married for?
Nancy and I've been married 50 years now, which is amazing.
Only 50 years? That's it?
50.
Just only? Okay.
Only 50. Yeah, we got married young. 20 years old, and golly, we had no idea what we were doing. Probably could have split once or twice and didn't. We were just committed. I think that was it. And there was also the constraint. Nobody in our marriages, families on either side, had ever had a divorce. And we just were both stubborn enough to say, we're not going to be the first ones to have it. And that constraint helped get us through some hard times, along with really finally putting our trust totally in God's got us together for a reason. Let's figure this out.
50 years. And how many kids?
We have 2 kids and 5 grandkids.
And how old are your kids?
They are, that's a really good question, 45 and 42.
So I could be like one of your kids.
You could, and we're open to that. We're always thinking people. Yeah, we would add to the fold, and our grandkids range from 8 to 26, so they're all over the place too.
Wow. So, and boy and a girl, both girls, both boys. What you got?
Boy and a girl.
Yeah, one of each.
One of each. My son was the eldest, and then his sister came along, and they're not quite 3 years apart. So it was good. They didn't have the typical brother, sister fights, and he really took care of her. He kind of watched over her and kind of protected her, and that was good.
And not to get too personal, but what was the deciding factor not to have more?
Well, we just didn't. I think we'd always kind of, it was weird. When we first started dating, I had this deal. I wanted 12. And then
12.
Yeah. Yeah. And so she kind of said, whatever. And so then we had Grant, and we both kind of looked at each other and said, how about two? And we both said, that sounds like a good idea. Not that he was hard or anything, but, I think at that point I thought, well, can I really spread my love over 12 kids? Now I realize that I could, that God would give me a special. And friends of mine that have six, or a couple of friends that have 6 kids and one that has 7 kids, and just how they love and embrace each kid as an individual. But at that point, I can love another kid besides him. And then, of course, Julie came along, and I thought, okay, I can love 2, but we decided to stay with 2.
All right, cool, man. So 50 years of marriage, 2 kids, boy and a girl. You said something earlier that I really want to get back to, and that is kids, you used to focus on kids, and then you decided to focus on marriage because maybe that's where the foundation is. Do you think most people have it wrong when they're like, oh, no, it's all about the kids. Everything is about the kids. My spouse comes second. It's about the kids. What's your view on that?
I think we get it backwards. I think the best gift, I've heard from a lot of people for your kids is to have a strong marriage. I mean, we're modeling marriage for them. I think that's the best avenue for relationships. I think God created it for that. And I think when you let your marriage go or put it on the back burner, say for 18 years while we raise kids, that's the couples that I see in counseling that go, I don't really even know this person. We've been doing for a long time, but we're really strangers. And I think that is not what God's intent is. I think God's intent is for it to be a team, to work together, to grow your marriage. You may grow it in some different ways while you're raising kids, but you've got to make your marriage a priority. I mean, I tell couples sometimes, I'll say, when's the last time you had a date? And they'll kind of look at each other like, I have no idea last time we had a date. And I'll say, you got to have dates. And one of them will say, well, we don't want to leave the kids. We like to take the kids with. And I said, your kids need to see you dating. You are modeling marriage for them. And when they're married, don't you want them to date their spouse? And they kind of go, yeah, I guess we do. And so I think sometimes we just don't think about it. I don't think people intentionally do that, but sometimes they don't realize what they're doing to their marriage by not continuing to grow it and nurture it during the times that they're raising kids.
Well, it probably comes from like a really noble place, right? It comes from like this perception perception of like, well, this is selfless. If I put my spouse first, like, what kind of parent am I?
Yeah.
Right. So what advice do you have? Like, obviously we need to continually date our spouse, but for the folks that are listening to this show and they're like, no, my kids come first before my spouse. What are we missing here long term? Like, we obviously know we're missing a connection short term, but what are we missing long term?
I think long term, I think it's just, you can't just put your marriage on hiatus for a while. I mean, it's not you. It's just one of those things. I think as looking at ours that continues to grow and evolve. We did a pretty good job of putting our marriage a priority when we were raising kids, and I think that has paid off. So when the kids left, we were just kind of like, yeah, that's kind of sad, and it was. I mean, it's an end of a part of your life. But then it was like, golly, look at all this freedom, and we were connected, and we had things we wanted to do, and we wanted to enjoy each other more, and all those kind of things. And so I think we would have missed out on that. We would have had that transition. And I think, we're all vulnerable to affairs and things like that. I think if you're not nurturing your marriage, you leave that door open. And I think we're all vulnerable. I mean, I think anybody that says they're not vulnerable is kidding themselves, because we just live in a culture that kind of leans that way in a lot of ways. And so I think you miss out on that. I think you run some risk of stepping outside your marriage. And I think you don't, I think Nancy and I really connected well while we were raising our kids. And it was fun to enjoy that together. Did kids' schedules and stuff take priority sometimes? Yeah. They did, but that was okay. That was okay because we always had our date night. We always tried to spend time each day communicating, just the two of us. And then we did all the things we needed to do with our kids. And we loved raising our kids. I coached soccer. I coached softball. I coached baseball. I'm not a good coach, but I had such a ball doing all those things, really. And so we were involved. Nancy was also involved in the schools. And so we were very involved with our kids, but we also kept our marriage, I think, where God wanted us to.
Yeah. I mean, I think you mentioned earlier on the modeling thing, people, I didn't have a good father figure growing up. Yeah, my father figures, I mean, I came on your show, we talked about it. My father figures were in and out. My mom was married 3 times. I never really saw like that solid father figure in my life, and therefore I never really saw the solid marriage. But here's what I did see. I did see from my grandfather how much he loved my grandmother. And they were married for 53 years before he passed away of pretty bad heart complications. But he loved her so much, he went out of his way to love her publicly. In this like really cool way. He always complimented her. He always held her hand. He always hugged her. He always kissed her. I mean, literally in their 70s, he was doing this stuff, right? And that I didn't appreciate that back then, but I really appreciate it now. And what I try to do with my kids, I don't try. Actually, there's not a whole lot of things I'm good at, but there is one thing I'm good at is showing my kids how much I love their mom. And that comes naturally to me because I think I was modeled that in such a powerful way when I was a kid. And I think that one of the goals that I have for the boys is like, hey, this is how you love a woman, right? And this is how you develop a relationship. And I agree with you. I think a lot of people, if they're not connecting on that profound level, then we step into this danger zone of, well, I know this person and we parent together and we're friends. I like her, I like him, but I don't really know if the intimacy is the level that I really want. And I don't know if the sex is really what I want. And it just seems like there's something missing, right? And you mentioned that people are more vulnerable to step out of their marriages if they put the kids first and they don't put the marriage first. Do you think that is because if you don't do that, we get lonely?
Oh, I think so. I think we've still got those needs, and to think that we can put those needs on the back burner too, I don't think that works very well. And I think then, I honestly, Larry, now I probably see probably 30% of the couples I see with infidelity, the woman is the one who stepped outside because we've got more women in the workplace. Women travel more during work and things like that. So that's been a really interesting change. I've always seen people for infidelity, but it has ramped up a little bit more. And I think that difference in the percentages has really been interesting. And almost everyone I tell that, they kind of take a step back. But when you think about our culture, I think it kind of makes sense. It kind of fits where our culture is today.
So what is the main complaint that women have when they step outside the marriage and they're like, well, I did it because...
no communication. I hear that more than anything. No affection, no communication. Just a woman, we pursue our wives really good to get the ring on their finger. And then I think sometimes as guys, and we go off trying to conquer something else or work or whatever it is. And I think we miss out if we don't continue to pursue them. They need us to pursue them. I think, we've been married 50 years and she still wants me to pursue her. So I can tell you up to now at 50 years, you got to do it at least that long.
So loneliness, communication. So when we talk about the needs of communication with wives, what are men missing?
Well, I think they're so much more relational than we are. And I think we have to instead, I think sometimes as guys we go, well, you're just a woman or whatever or something like that. And we kind of play it off. But they have a real need there. And we have a lot to learn from them, I think, as far as communication and relation. I've got couples that the guy thinks he's hitting home runs in communication, but he's talking about sports or things that no relationship things. And our wives want to talk about our relationships. They want to know what we did during the day. They're interested in us. They want to be able to share what they're thinking and feeling with us. And so I think those are the things that connect a woman in communication. And when those aren't there, I think she's vulnerable to get that met somewhere else. Now, a lot of times with women, they get that met from other women. I think that's always been. I guess when I figured that out, I wanted Nancy to have good friends she talked to and shared with, but I wanted to be the one she came to first. And then if she talked to other people, great. But I really wanted to be the one she came to first. And being a good listener is so much important in communication. And I think as guys, sometimes it's like, okay, how long is she going to talk? As soon as she quits, I'm going to go do what I want to do. But it's like, we need to really focus on what they're saying so we can respond to them or say, wow, that's cool. Or how'd that make you feel? Or tell me more about that. And you will see your wife light up. She wants to engage in conversation, relational conversation with you.
So the words fine, good, busy, like that really doesn't cut it with our wives. That's not the answers they want to hear. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And they're so easy. One of my best examples, I think, and I love this couple and I love this guy. And we talked about just what we're talking about. And I said, you got to communicate 30 minutes a day. Or you got to spend, no, I didn't say communicate. I said, you got to spend 30 minutes a day together. Well, he came in and he was just smiling ear to ear. And I said, well, how'd it go? And she goes, it didn't go well at all. We sat on the couch together, but he was watching the TV the whole time. Well, he thought sitting next to her, watching the TV counted as communication, being relational with her. He thought he hit a home run. She thought he struck out. And so the deal is we've got to see what does she need in that area, because it is going to be different, because we're easy about, great day, those kind of things. Nancy really taught me a lot about it because she wouldn't let me off with that. She'd say, I'd come in and she'd say, how's your day? And I'd say, fine. And she'd go, let's sit down. And I'd sit down and she'd say, okay, tell me more about your day. And so she taught me what she needed me to say to her. And thank goodness I did. And I felt the value, because then she would share what on in her day. And, we'd stand up from that 15, 20-minute conversation. And I could just see light in her eyes. I could see, I know something good happened there. I'm not sure, it didn't happen that good for me, but it happened really good for her. And then I learned to value that over time too.
So, and of course, when women come to us to vent, we need to fix those problems for them, right? That's what they want?
Yeah, no, this is, and I think even when I have known that for years as a counselor, I can still jump into it. So we made an agreement years ago, and it's like, okay, if you need me to fix it, you tell me, otherwise I'm just going to listen. That has been so good for us, because, she'll tell me something and at one, I can relax. If she didn't tell me she needs help with it, I can just listen to her and relax and, connect with her and whatever need is. And if she wants me help with it, she tells me. And so then I can get to do what I love to do, and that's problem solve with her. So in other words, don't fix the problem unless the request comes in. So, right? That's what we want to do. Okay. Yeah. And you can even ask, you can ask after you listen, like say, well, do you need me to help you with this? Or what do you want me to do? You want me to pray about it for you? What do you want me to do? And kind of ask her, and because you're learning about each other. And every wife is unique. Every husband's unique. And, I can give you a template that fits over in some general areas, but you've got to know your spouse. You've got to know what really makes her feel loved and cared for, just like you want her to do that for you.
If you could generalize what makes a woman feel loved and cared for, what are the common themes that you've heard over 45 plus years of working with people?
I go back. Communication is always something that women say. Usually, even though quality time is not her love language, they usually like time together. They want to feel secure, and I think that financially, that's part of it. To know that you would take care of them if most couples both work, but if you didn't work, that you would take care of them. I think those are all major things, and I think. Just to know that you are, the other part of security is to know that you're there today and you're going to be there tomorrow and next month and next year and all the years after that. When it goes back to sex, a woman is able to give herself so much better in sex when she feels confident and secure in the relationship, that you're going to be there, because a woman's very vulnerable in the sexual relationship. And so if she doesn't completely trust you, she's not going to open up in the way that I think she would. When she totally trusts you, she can let any walls down and just enjoy being with her husband.
I'm really sensing this deep need of certainty that women need, like the certainty, the security in the relationship, from a communication standpoint, from a financial standpoint, from you have their back standpoint, to confidence that they can maybe just... I had one guest come on not too long ago, and it's like, if a man can remain calm and allow his woman to be a total mess, and to give her permission to do that without necessarily taking on like her emotions, like, why are you coming to me with all this? Like, what do you want me to do with it? Right. it's like this deep need of certainty for women. Is that true, or am I off?
No, I love that. I love that. I also loved what you said earlier about your granddad, how he would affirm her in public. I think that goes so far to our wives, because really, if you think about it, in the ways that a wife, the gifts God gave her of being a nurturer and a lover, there's nobody really that can affirm her in that as well as you and your kids can. And so when you do that either personally to her or out in public, I think it means an awful lot to our wives when we do that.
Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to use myself here as an example because I'm very curious. I've done over 600 podcasts, and man, we've been masterminding on this for almost 6 years, and we've got a lot of even marital experts in our community that have been very gracious with their content and their support and their coaching. There's one thing that I think men struggle with. And if I look at even all of our podcasts, we've given so many ways for men to, number one, optimize communication with their wife, allow them to be active listeners, using tactical empathy, using emotional validation, all these things, right? To allow that woman to feel loved. Here's where I think we've missed, and here's the direction I really want to go. Men now are like, okay, I'm doing all these things. And not that this is a no more Mr. Nice Guy covert contract. That's not the direction I'm going in. Do you know what I'm talking about, by the way?
No.
Dr. Robert Glover's book.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
where he's like, okay, yeah, I'll do these things with the expectation that you'll do X for me, right? That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But what I will tell you is that most guys, and you're talking to one, that I know the keys to my wife's heart. I know how to communicate with her to make her feel incredibly loved. And we do have a really great relationship. And every year we're together, it actually gets better, but it's not by accident. It's because we're both eager to learn skills. Here's my miss. And if I look at most men and the things that they struggle with is like, okay, now how do I express what my needs are without shame, guilt, or being needy? And I'll give you an example. And okay. My wife and I literally just had this conversation the other night. So my wife and I, we have a weekly date night. I always like to come prepared, and she does too, with like really outside the box questions, like just so we can constantly court each other and get to know each other. And one thing came clear out of a question that I asked her was, because I pursue her a lot, right? I pursue her with compliments. I'm affectionate with her. She knows that I'm smitten for her, right? But mm-hmm. I don't do it in a needy way. I do it in, I'm going to show you love and affection because I love you and I want to be affectionate with you, not because I want something from you. And we've gotten very clear with that too. Here's one thing that came out of that. My wife is like, I love that you chase me. And I love the way you chase me. You do it in such a confident way, right? And my wife doesn't necessarily chase me back a lot. And there's that part of me that I do wish, I was like, wow, I wish that she would. And she was gone this past weekend. She went out of town with her girlfriends. I was at home with the kids. We had a blast. It was amazing. I went to the grocery store on Sunday night. I was prepping everything for dinner, and she came up to me. And my wife is not the most physically affectionate initiator. Now, she'll reciprocate, but she's not necessarily the one that initiates. So she came up to me and she gave me a kiss and a hug, and her batteries were recharged. She was with her girlfriend. She had a good time. And I was kind of in the mindset of like, all right, I just walked in with, 80 bags of groceries. Like you try to come in with all of them at once, right? You're unpacking them. I was trying to get dinner ready because, she was tired. And I'm just like, hey, I got dinner. When you get home tonight, I got dinner. And she kept stopping me and kissing me and stuff like that. And for a moment, I made the observation of that, so that's what I do with her. But she's always in the mindset of like, I've got 4 boys to take care of. I'm trying to get dinner going. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. It's like a lot of things. So when I stop her in the middle of her thing or whatever she's doing, she'll kind of like, yeah, well, okay. And now I'm off doing my thing again. And I made an observation. I was like, what's funny? I was like, I feel like just for a minute, our roles were reversed just now, because I get that when I come up to you in the middle of the day and you're scattered and I come up and kiss you or I'm affectionate with you, quote unquote, chase you, that you don't necessarily reciprocate. And I realized from doing all the podcasts and all that, I know that you're not in that mindset, and I don't even expect you to be, right? And I think I just got a glimpse of that, of probably like, okay, I'm trying to get all these other things done, and you want affection from me. But the thing that I battle with is like, I made the point to her and she's like, well, what are you saying? Are you saying I'm doing something wrong? Like, no, I'm not saying you're doing something wrong. I'm saying it's an observation. And I'm also saying that at times I do wish it was a little different, because I feel like I'm always the one chasing you. And I told her, I was like, but I get it. You know, you're homeschooling 4 boys right now because of COVID. You know, it's a frazzled day normally. You're trying to get through everything. But do I wish it was a little different? Yeah. And there was a part of me that I started to minimize how important that was to me. I was like, but you know what? It's not that big of a deal. Don't even worry about it. And I thought to myself, I was like, no, this is kind of a big deal. Like, I do wish she chased me a little bit more. And then we kind of got in this back and forth. And then there was that part of me as a man, I was like, man, I shouldn't have brought this up. And then we kind of got in an argument over it. And I looked at her and I did the adult thing. And I was like, I should have never said anything. I was like, it wasn't really that big of a deal before. I shouldn't have said anything, because now it's turned into this. And I should, you know, sometimes every now and again, these are the reasons why I'm not very good at stating my needs, because I don't know exactly how it's going to land with you. And there was that part of me that I deal with that a little bit. And I know men deal with that on a way more profound level, to where it eats away at their relationship. Does that make sense? Or did I?
Yeah, no, I think it does. And I think we're, you know, what I talk to couples about is to having just regular time set aside to talk about, to kind of evaluate the relationship. We've got a resource we use at Awesome Marriage, and it's kind of a weekly checkup, and it just kind of helps them go through and talk about some things from sex to communication to all those kind of things. And I think when you have I think it's how you frame it. And so if I felt like Nancy, and then we were different in that way. I came from a very affectionate home. Hers was not physically affectionate. And so, you know, my parents held hands all the time. They always sat close together. It was like, you know, they were my model of marriage. And so that wasn't easy for Nancy to do. And so I tried the shaming. I did all that stuff that you do in early marriage that just doesn't help anything. And didn't even make me feel better after it was over, you know, kind of like what you're saying. I wish I hadn't said anything. And so to where we get to the point where we're able to sit down and say, hey, you know, last week you really came up behind me and you hugged me, and then you turned me around and you kissed me. I love that. And, you know, I love it when you do that. I would love for you to do that more. I'm not putting that as something you have to do. I just want you to know how much that meant to me when you did that. Now, does that mean that she's going to turn around and all of a sudden do that all the time? Probably not. But I think it is letting her know what she did that made a difference for me, that made me really feel loved and cared for. And so what I try to do is when Nancy does those things is to reaffirm that, to really speak back into her in that. And that seems to have helped over time. And now where she is more comfortable, you know, if we're out holding hands, she still won't hold it as long as I wish she would, but that's still, you know, it's kind of like, okay, I just held it for 10 minutes, that's it, you know. So, but I think it's keeping your expectations realistic with your wife. I think you said some good things. There's always, a guy said something to me last week I really hadn't thought about, and that was the fact, he said, it seems like I'm able to compartmentalize things a lot easier than she is, where she has 4 kids, she's got this, I got the grocery store, all this stuff is there all the time in her mind. Whereas guys, I think because of our work, and maybe we really are wired, most of us, that way, where we can compartmentalize. And so when we're focused on her, we don't let anything else get in the way. It's like, okay, I'm on you. I am for you. I'm going for you. I want you to feel loved. I want to have sex. I want whatever it is. We are able to do that, and nothing else interferes with that. And so our wives, you know, it's like a juggler, and they've got about 10 balls in the air, and you come home and they don't set down those 10 balls and pick up just yours. They put you into the mix, you know, like that. And so I think for us as guys, letting our wives know what we need or care, that really makes us feel good and loved, affirming that when they do that. I think those things help, because none of us want to come out as needy, just like you said. You just don't want to be, this whiny little husband that says, oh, please, no. You want her to do that and just reinforce it when she does it.
I like that. And, I think we need to really understand, because I look at my wife's work, of what she does. She stays at home. She's got the toughest job on the planet. Yeah. She really does. Yeah. And I get it. When she was gone this past weekend, and the boys constantly needed something from me, and I get it. That's her day in and day out. And I know how tough it is for her. And I'm sorry if I laughed when you said that, like literally the 8-year-old boy came out of me when you're like, she's not going to drop those 10 balls and pick up yours. I just couldn't help myself.
As soon as I said it, I thought the same thing too. And I thought, well, we're on a guy show. Okay, we can say that, right?
Oh man, that was great. Okay. All right. So we talked about the needs of, the top needs of our women. And I think you're right, man. Communication, I think that's the catalyst, right? For women to feel very connected to us is communicate. I'm so curious, how many guys have sat in the chair across from you during a counseling session, as well as I have? I'm not a counselor, but I do coach men, but I can't even count how many times a man has sat across from me and said, I'm just not a good communicator. I mean, do you think that's just like an excuse? That's the story we tell ourselves that, keeps us from our greatness. And one other quick story to just kind of hit this home while you think about that. I posted something in our Dad Edge group on Facebook of, when your patience is at its thinnest, what things are you not doing in your life to optimize your patience? And I listed 3 things. I'm not up before my family at 4:30 in the morning to do my morning routine, take care of myself. I'm usually hungry and I haven't eaten, or I'm exhausted. Those are the 3 things that really wear and tear on me. And we had just post after post after post. One guy in particular literally said this. I can't make this up. I come from a long line of angry men. Anger is in my DNA, but I take pills for it, so I'm a little better about it. But I'm genetically angry. And I thought to myself, I was like, that's a story that you're telling yourself that is absolutely not true. You can go out and learn the skills of anger management. You can go out and learn the skills of communication. So for guys who are listening and they're like, but Dr. Kim, I'm just not a good communicator. For that,
you can be.
Yeah,
you can be. I think it takes work and effort, and sometimes it's not. I think that we're not sometimes willing to put. I don't know that we see the value in it, and so I think we have to accept the fact that this will really make your marriage better. It will draw her closer to you. It will improve your sex life. I mean, all those things. That's when a woman feels connected to you, the sex usually goes up in a marriage. It just does, and so there's. Not that you do it for that reason, but you can learn to communicate. And I think the expert on communication in your marriage is her. And so just talking to her, ask her questions about, what do you want me to talk about? What kind of things can I think about during the day that I know that you would love to hear in the evening, or how do we process things together? And just working on that, because I think you can learn that. And I think I think it's a cop-out just with the anger thing. I mean, the Bible says be angry and do not sin. So anger God gave us. We know it's one of the emotions, which is not our favorite usually. But when I'm upset at Nancy, if I throw something at her, well, I've sinned. If I sit down and say, hey, this really upset me, can we talk about it? Then I haven't. And I think that gets rid of the excuse of anger's in my DNA. Well, no, you've watched it modeled in a bad way, probably for years and years and years by different men in your family. But you can change that. You can be angry and not sin. You can be angry and grow your marriage.
So we've agreed that, hey, you can learn these skills. It is
Absolutely.
A skill. You can learn these things. And I think a lot of men really look at this like it's like a martial arts studio, right? And you've got jiu-jitsu, you've got taekwondo, you've got hapkido, you've got all these different things you can learn. And sometimes you're just like looking at all these options and you're like, where do I even start, right? So what is the smallest simplest thing that you can recommend to a guy who's listening right now and is like, okay, I'm willing to learn the skill of communication, but Dr. Kim, I don't know where to start. Where do I start?
I think you can just go with some basic questions every day. Hey, honey, what was the best thing that happened today? And she gets to talk about that. Then, and she's going to ask you things back. And you can say, what was the worst thing that happened today? How can I pray for you? How did you see God in the world today? I think any of those simple questions like that get her talking, and then you can respond to that. She can tell you about the best thing, and you can say, that's so cool. I love that. This is what happened. It may help spur some things in you, but just some basic, simple questions. What's the best thing? What's the worst thing? How'd you see God work? What can I pray for you about? All those things will get it going.
Quality of your life depends on the quality of the questions you ask yourself and people around you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
and you want to just see, the more you can begin to see you guys as a team, it's not him against her or her against him. You guys are a team in everything you do. Then I think it's easier to begin to work on these things together, because she wants you to communicate better. She can help you. You can use some tools, and then just begin to do that.
All right. So another question for you.
Okay.
Let's just say it's been years or even months, whatever it is. It's been a long time since the man who's listening right now has talked to his wife in such a way. She's gotten so used to, how was your day? What's for dinner? Good, fine, good, busy. What's wrong? Nothing. Like, these are like this is how we communicate. So the guy who goes home from work today and is like, honey, what was the best part of your day? And in his mind, he's like, oh, that's going to be awesome. I'm going to ask her that. She's going to open up to me. It's going to open up a whole new world. And then she looks at him and she's like, what's wrong with you? Have you been drinking before you got home? Like, why are you asking me this? Why are you being weird? Right. So, and what I think will happen is the guy will go home, he'll try to use this and it won't land the way he thinks it will. And then he'll be like, see, didn't work. This is just crazy, whatever. I'm just going back to what I was doing. Now that's not what he says, but how can we ask these questions? Maybe number one, without expectation, or number two, just say, hey, honey, look, I just want to improve our communication style. So one of the things that I'm going to start doing is I'm just going to ask you something different every day for a while, just to get to know you. Maybe just to give her a heads up. I don't know. What's the best strategy? Yeah,
I think so. I think sometimes if you just come in and you've never said anything, but like you said, yes, no, maybe, busy. If you just go in cold with her, she may faint, you may have to revive her, in some way. But I think just saying, hey, I listened to a podcast today, or, I know you've wanted our communication to be better, and I've just made a commitment today to work on it. So I'm going to start asking you some questions. And I think to the guys, I would say, don't do it 1 day or 3 days. Do it 30 days and then evaluate. See if your marriage is better. If you do it every day for 30 days, see where your marriage is at the end of 30 days. I would bet money that you're going to say my marriage is better and this has been worth it. It may have been hard. You may have been struggling. And you can ask the same questions. It's a different day. If you don't get creative about the questions, that's okay too. Just do the same ones every day. She'll have a different answer for you.
How do we rate? How do we understand whether the relationship is better? Because as you know, it's pretty subjective, right? It's not necessarily objective. And if you ask a guy on a day where they're not maybe operating and it feels good, he's like, we're just in the same place. Or they just got done having amazing sex and the past few days have been pretty good. They're like, it's off the charts, right? So it kind of depends on like when you ask that question. So how might we go back and just objectively evaluate, are things better than what they were?
Yeah, I think journaling through that time every day is really good, because I think sometimes things happen slowly. And when you can look back at the end of 30 days and you look back at day one, and she looked at you like, you're not going to continue to do that. She didn't say that, but she said, this is a nice idea. And then that you've seen over time that she begins to look forward to it, that you notice when you come home, she says, hey, let's sit down, or just begin to see some things like that. She seems a little closer to you. She scoots closer to you in bed. I mean, look for some things that are different in her and her response. She may not say it, and she might say, this has been the best 2 weeks in a long time in our marriage. I just feel so much closer to you. So, and you can ask her, you don't have to judge it all on your own. You can say, you know that I'm committed to work on this and we're 2 weeks into this. Do you think it's making a difference? And I think she'll say yes.
All right. So just don't take the guesswork right out of it. Just be able
go to the person you're trying. Because if it's not, then say, okay, what questions? Do you have some questions that you'd rather I ask, or some things I can do different? I'm still committed. I'm trying to refine this. So again, it goes back to being a team. I'm working with you on this.
I like that, man. So what have we, as we wrap up here, what have we not talked about that you think we should have?
I think, I think especially as we're ending this year, we've been, 9 months in a pandemic, 8.5, 9 months in a pandemic. People's lifestyles have changed. I think for guys, stay true to the vows you made with your spouse. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of couples that have struggled through the pandemic. I've seen guys get back into pornography that had gotten away from it. I think for guys, continue to be the man that God created you to be. And the things that there's temptations, I think this is a time that guys really need an accountability partner. You need someone to talk to every week that loves you enough to get in your face. And you tell that I've been struggling with porn again, and he's in your face every week saying, what happened? How can I help you? That kind of thing. Just encourage you, walk through some things with you. I think use this time that we're in right now to grow your marriage, not to destroy it. And I think it's easy for us to get selfish because we're all selfish. I'm selfish. That's been the biggest problem in our marriage the whole time is my selfishness. And so I can rationalize a lot of things. But when I really take time to look at it, pray about it, I know that, there's places I can't go, things I don't need to do. Plus, use that energy to grow your marriage.
I have thoroughly enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. Again, out of 600 episodes, we've never really hit upon the topic of some of the things that we talked about today. We've been really good about giving men a toolkit and resources of how to communicate better with their wives. But I love the fact that we hit upon a few things of what men can do from an internal standpoint of like the dialogue that they have with themselves, the things that they're going to do different. And then externally, what those expectations are going to look like and maybe those conversations. And then literally how to just observe and ask ourselves, is what I'm doing working? Is it improving? And what does that look like? So this has been awesome. I've really enjoyed this with you.
Well, I love every time we've gotten together. I love what you're doing. I've had a ball too. It's been fun. It's always good. You ask good questions. But I think we really did hit at some things. I mean, helping guys see that they hopefully they hear today that, yes, I can do some things I haven't been doing. I have a plan. I can have a plan. I can come alongside my wife in this. I can evaluate, and hopefully they're going to see in a month or so that my marriage is better, and you continue to do those things. Don't quit them after 30 days. Hopefully you're going to see it better. And it's like, don't think, okay, I can coast now. Keep doing it every day for the rest of your marriage, and you'll never regret it. You'll never regret it.
I love that. You are a fantastic, awesome man. And I know you're very humble, but seriously, 50 years of marriage, over 45 years of experience doing this. You are truly an awesome individual. Come on and just share some knowledge with us.
I appreciate that very much. I love what you're doing, Larry.
Thank you. And just as we wrap up here, where can the men find everything that you're doing, all your resources, if they want to connect?
Awesomemarriage.com. There's drop downs there on all our resources. We've got tons of resources. Our YouTube channel, we've got like 1,500 videos. Most of them are short on different topics. YouVersion, if you want to get in the Bible, you just look at my name, and we've got about 35 plans in there. There's some just for men, the 2 on the warrior. There's one just for guys that I think that I love and that were really fun to write, trying to help guys, continue to grow. So those would probably be our points. And then Awesome Marriage Podcast, which Larry's been on, and all those good things.
Well, guys, not to worry. We're going to have all the links in the show notes for Dr. Kim. So not to worry about that. That'll be in the footer of the show. Thank you so much for coming on today, Dr. Kim. And thanks for being our last podcast of the year 2020.
Yeah, let's look forward to 2021.
Or 2020, not 220. Yeah, 2020. I feel, it's like Mr. Mom, like 220, 221, whatever it takes.
Exactly.
Honestly, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks.